Welcome to Whiskey with the Werewolf Hunter. I'm Brian Easton, author of the Autobiography of a Werewolf Hunter series. This is something we've been doing for almost 3 months now. This will be our 12th episode. Now, last week we were gone in honor of the July 4th holiday, and I hope everybody had an enjoyable time, Independence Day celebration like I did. And speaking of America, tonight we're having some Black Jack, Black Label Jack Daniels. It doesn't get more American than that. Now, Jack is, of course, one of the most famous of Tennessee gentlemen. And Black Label Jack is kind of a gateway whiskey. It mixes great with colas and lemonades, ginger ale, what have you. You find the drink that whiskey's in, and you'll find Jack in the middle of it. It's a mellow sipping whiskey, too. And if you have a refined palate, which I don't, but if you do, and you're a whiskey snob, Jack Daniels probably isn't on your shelf except for maybe guests and making cocktails and things like that. And it's at 45% alcohol or 80 proof. It's pretty light-bodied. But of course, Jack Daniel has a history with us here in America with the mystique of Americana written all over it, much in the same vein as Harley-Davidson motorcycles and Winchester rifles. And as far as I'm concerned, there's nothing wrong with that. So go ahead and hit that subscribe button so you won't miss an episode of Whiskey with the Werewolf Hunter. And do that before you forget it, and then let's get on with the show. Last time we got together, we were talking about the Beast Princes, and I know we said we were going to go over the Beast Princes in turn, and we will, but I kind of thought a little bit more about that since last time, and I feel like I kind of jumped the gun a little bit there. I really want to lay out some of the basic dynamics of the lineage before we start getting into its notable personages. And we've talked about the rights of provenance and the difference between the marking and the whelping of different werewolves, and that's how they come about, through those two rights of provenance. So today I want to talk to you about the ranks of the lineage. Now, the ranks of the lineage are primarily designated as wolven, which is a word that means wolf-like, or having the characteristics features of a wolf. And this is because werewolves really don't have much to do with wolves at all, not actual wolves. The natural wolf seems to have been an aesthetic choice for its infernal architecture. The wolf was obviously an influence on their design, but that's pretty much it. Werewolves are not highly evolved wolves or any derivation or deviation or mutation of that natural species. These are hell's apex predators, infernal beings in monstrous forms that can vary widely in appearance from individual to individual. So, that being said, and probably said again, the order of the lineage, its hierarchy, is more like a caste system than it is one of social class. Although, strictly speaking, it is neither a social class system or a caste system. It's based on the social status as derived primarily from one's birth and ancestry, but unlike a true caste system, it can also be affected by an individual's merits. That is, they have the ability to rise above their station, so to speak. So an individual born into a lower, or one of the lower wolven designations can improve his lot in life through his physical or his mental prowess, their influence that they may have, even wealth they may amass, or prestige that they may accumulate over the course of their life. So let's work our way up the pecking order. At the bottom rung is the least wolven, the omega wolf. The least wolven are products of the intermingling of bloodlines that are incompatible. Now, least woven or omega wolves are only brought about through the birthright. They're only brought about by whelping. There are no marked omega wolves. They are brought about strictly through procreation between incompatible bloodlines of wolves. And the attributes of these wolves, as you might imagine, include frailty, weakness. They're not very large, they're not very robust, but they do tend to have, for some reason, an enhanced tolerance to silver. Maybe this is because the silver doesn't affect them like it does the others, because they have not much of the Therion soul there to really harm. So the omegas are predominantly mules, meaning that they cannot reproduce themselves, neither by birthmark or birthright. They can't bite and they can't whelp another wolf. Their portion of the Therion soul, their legacy, is just too thin, and it's as low as it goes on the totem pole. In rare instances, the bite from an omega can cause in a bitten human being a kind of a lycanthropy type of a form of insanity, but that's about it. Now, ironically, and those of you who read the books probably know what I'm going to say. Ironically, the very same criteria which are responsible for these omega wolves, these least woven, is also responsible for one of the most frightening, if not the most frightening, breed of werewolf there is, which is the darkest woven. And we'll get into that down the road. I'll kind of save that one for last, I think. One step above the least woven, one step above that, the omega wolf, is what's known as the low woven, or the lesser woven. Now, these are low potency. Again, the legacy, the portion of their Therion soul of these lesser woven is low potency. It's very thin. Not as thin as the least woven, but still pretty thin. And they only change, this type only change on a full moon. They are generally people who are humans that are turned into this kind of a, I don't know, almost like more of a cinematic werewolf, more of the Lawrence Talbot or Jack Russells of the world, of the werewolf world. They tend to regard this as this affliction as a curse, because they're nonverbal. They have this mongrel blood, and this sort can be done by birthright or birthmark. In most cases, creating a least woven, unless, of course, they procreate with a more powerful wolf, or they have their legacy implemented, supplemented by the bite of another wolf. I mean, there's all kinds of different factors that could be at play here. But as a general rule, this lesser woven is the kind that we're talking about, that is more of what you see in the old movies. Tortured souls at first, gradually losing their humanity over time. And next time we'll talk about the high woven and the noble woven. We'll start getting into the upper echelons of the lineage hierarchy. So this is the part of the show that I like to call Let's Talk Shop, which is monster hunting. I've been going through the Monster Hunter's Code with you, which is some guidelines that I put down for the Legends of the Monster Hunter series a few years ago, and been going through them point by point. And tonight's point simply says this: monsters love to hurt the people you love. If you don't learn to live with loneliness, you'll be forced to live with guilt. Loneliness is the lighter burden to bear. Now, in my books, Sylvester Logan James realizes the truth behind this philosophy pretty early on, but not until he has already been immersed in the guilt of losing his family. Then he can kind of see it more clearly, the loneliness and the guilt side by side, and which is the worst of those two emotions. Of course, very few men can stay an island forever, and Sylvester lets people back into his life, as it turns out, and he goes through his day-to-day, and this turns out to be mostly women. that he becomes involved with, he becomes friends with, or he develops a relationship with. Now, just because these are women that he becomes associated with, and it is true that they become victims, because monsters love to hurt the people you love. It's not that I use them because they're women as victims. I've been criticized as writing Sylvester as a kind of a 70s and 80s style macho man who wants to bed every woman he meets. And I didn't choose the women as victims because they were women. Like I said, there's plenty of wolf bait on both genders going on in my series. My notion about his Sylvester's psychology here is that he is a man raised without a mother, raised without any kind of feminine aspect during his formative years. And so he craves the company of women, which almost inevitably takes the form of a sexual relationship. It is his loneliness specifically for a female company that is one of the biggest chinks in his armors, I think. So when you compare loneliness and guilt, okay, I thought of this little analogy. You know what it's like when you're driving and you've been on the road a long time and you start to get sleepy, and I mean it just comes on you before you know it, right? You're tired, and you ever notice how easy it is to convince yourself that it'd be okay if you just rested your eyes a little bit while you're driving tired? I mean, you're going down the highway at 75, 80 miles an hour. Your life is literally on the line, and somehow closing your eyes doesn't seem like that big a deal. It's kind of seductive. It just kind of lulls its way in. Well, loneliness may be easier to bear than guilt, but it's also a lot easier to shut your eyes to. So the last time we started a segment called Tools of the Trade, where we're going through Sylvester's arsenal a piece at a time, taking a look at his weapons of choice. So today I'm going to talk to you and show you the Winchester model 1894. So this is mine. This is a model 94 repeating carbine, which is basically a long gun with a shorter barrel than typically is associated with a rifle or a musket. Designed by John Browning in 1894, from which it gains its model number, and was originally chambered to fire black powder cartridges. Since then, since 1895, actually, in the advent of smokeless powder, the Winchester Model 94 has been chambered for 30-30 Winchester rounds, which look like this. Okay. Well, this was originally manufactured by the legendary Winchester Repeating Arms Company out of Connecticut, and today the brand is owned by Olin Corporation. Now this one, as you can see, has been customized with brass-headed tacks after a style that is what's loosely referred to as Indian tack guns, due to the Native American tradition of decorating their weapons in such a way. Something I always admired and decided to use it on this one. I've outfitted this one with a sling as well, and I've got a saddle scabbard for it. Now, Sylvester's isn't necessarily done this way, but it is the same model, it is the same style of Winchester 94. He doesn't use it as often as he uses his 1911 Colts, which we'll look at another day. But the Winchester does make some memorable appearances in the novels. He buys it the year that his wife and son are killed, along with the sawed-off shotgun that he named Sounder, which we'll also look at down the road. He uses it when he tracks down Jonah Digger Hamilton, who escapes from Masaga, and he's assigned with recapturing him, hunting him down and recapturing him. And he takes it with him into Harwintown, Nevada, when he faces the whole town that has been infested by werewolves. And he takes it to Siberia as well in the hunt for the darkest wolven. Neither of those two places does he actually use it. Anyway, these babies are one of the most popular and most famous hunting rifles ever. And so it just makes sense that one of them should belong in the arsenal of a werewolf hunter. I was asked by a subscriber a while back about my aspirations that I had when I started writing these books. And I realized the other day that I hadn't really addressed that, so I'm going to rectify that situation right now. So when I started writing these stories that would eventually become this series, my only real desire was to write about them, was to get the words down and the stories out of my head. Oh, sure, I fantasized about what it would be like to see my book in print, of course, or to be published, to be a celebrated author with people asking for my autographs and ask my opinion on things and such. But I never really thought any of that would happen. And to a large extent, I was right. Anyway, I was always happiest when I was writing a story, any kind of story, even if it wasn't this particular series. And I was also sometimes at my most miserable. And those of you who out there who are writers can sympathize with that, I'm sure. But what I do know, and what I always have known and still do, is that I would write these books even if I never made a dime off of them. And that I would tell these tales even if I was never published. I had a vision for a character and a passion for a certain kind of storytelling, and that's served me pretty well so far. Any success to which I can lay claim is kind of icing on the cake for me. So thank you, those who have read my books, for providing that icing to me. Well, we're going to be announcing a new contest next time we get together. As I talked about early on in the going, back several months ago, I'm going to be giving away one of these handsome Whiskey with the Werewolf Hunter t-shirts. This one is an extra large, extra one that I've got. So if you're an extra large size and you win the contest, you're in luck. You won't have to wait too long for it. But we're going to talk about that more next time. And until then, pay me a visit, if you will. On Facebook, you can visit my website at www.werewolfhunter.com and drop me a line, Brian@werewolfhunter.com. Thanks for watching Whiskey with the Werewolf Hunter. We'll see you next time.